Welcome back everyone, this is Vaz again with another video from World of Warships Legends. And today we have another versus video for you. In versus, I compared two similar and readily available ships to determine if one is better than the other. And guess what? I've remembered to explain my process this time. I'll compare the stats of everything possible, and if one ship has a distinct advantage over the other in one particular area, they will gain a point. We will tally the points as we go, and then summarize everything at the end to determine a winner. I'll also drop some advice as to the builds and commanders of these ships. Now today we have a showdown of Tier 5 Tech Tree United States Navy cruisers, the Pensacola and the Dallas. This was suggested by channel subscriber BrandonABC, so thank you for that, Brandon. If you guys have any other suggestions for comparisons of ships that are readily available, let me know in the comments below. First, we'll start off with a little bit of information on both ships. The Pensacola was the lead ship in the Pensacola class of cruisers and was commissioned in 1930. In 1931, the Pensacola class was reclassified as heavy cruisers. As for the Dallas, it was never built. It was designed in 1934 and was intended to be a lighter version of the Brooklyn class. I looked into it, and for the PC version of Dallas, Wargaming took quite a few elements from the designs of the Brooklyn and Cleveland classes of ships. Now on to upgrades. Both ships have 2 starting upgrade slots and 3 unlockable slots. And all upgrades for both ships are pretty much exactly the same. Starting with slot 1, we have Aiming Systems Mod 1, Second Battery Mod 2, and Main Battery Mod 2. I do recommend Aiming Systems Mod 1 for the better dispersion. Secondaries are not really useful in a cruiser, and the main battery mod isn't really useful on either of these ships. Next we have slot 2. The choices are Steering Gears Mod 2, Propulsion Mod 2, and Damage Control System Mod 2. I recommend the steering gears on the Dallas because it will help you in tracking down destroyers and getting away afterwards. For the Pensacola, you can either use steering gears or propulsion, it's really up to you, but I like to use propulsion on the bulkier ships. And finally, we have the unlockable upgrades. Both ships have hull, shell damage, and firing range increases. For these 2 ships, you're going to want to unlock these 3 upgrades as soon as possible. Playing them stock is just not fun. Next, we have the loadout screen. Both of these ships have a Type 4 permanent camo that is available via the California Research Project in the Bureau. Both ships also have the exact same damage control party and sonar. With regards to fighters, the Pensacola's fighter has 11 more damage per second. If they're duking it out against each other, the Pensacola's fighter would win against the Dallas's, and although this is a marginal advantage, it does gain the first point. This is because a cruiser's fighter typically lasts 6 minutes. This adds up to quite the difference. If it were a battleship's plane, which typically only lasts 1.5 minutes, then the advantage would be quite marginal, and I probably wouldn't assign a point here. Now that being said, both fighters are good, with the Dallas's being above average and the Pensacola's being one of the best at the tier. Next, we're going to move on to the stats screen, starting with survivability. The Pensacola has quite a few more hit points than the Dallas, and this gains it a second point. We're going to save the armor for the armor viewer screen, and both ships have next to no torpedo damage reduction. Next, we're going to talk about both ships' artillery. Here's where things get a little debatable. Maybe even a little complicated, so stick with me. Do I give out points for reload time and shell damage, which would make it a wash, or do I go DPM? Ultimately, I chose DPM as a straight up factor since that would have the biggest effect on the entirety of a match. First off, both ships have the exact same amount of turrets, guns, and range, thank goodness. Second, the Dallas has a reload time that is half the Pensacola's, which warrants a point in itself, and is especially important in brown pants moments. The Dallas also gets another point for its amazing turret traverse. Now let's look at the shell damage for the Pensacola. It does have higher HE and AP, and also a higher fire chance. Now cut those in half to account for the Dallas's 50% decrease in reload time, and the Dallas takes it across the board. I'll give out 1 point for the shell damage DPM and 1 point for the fire chance per minute. I am going to give out a point to the Pensacola for its secondaries since there are more of them and they do have a better reload time. Now as for anti-aircraft, I did some research and the Pensacola did have 20 AA guns during the war, which increased to 26 after the war. Now for the Dallas, this is where it got super complicated for me. They had draft designs on the Wargaming website and it was just, all kinds of nonsense that I didn't understand. But overall, Wargaming combined two separate designs for the Dallas, and they included dual-purpose artillery guns, and one of the designs contained about 24 AA guns, while the other contained 36. So for now, we'll just have to wait and see until the stats are released, but they do seem pretty similar. Moving on to maneuverability, both ships have the same max speed, which is actually surprising. We'll consider the smaller turning circle of the Pensacola and the shorter rudder shift of the Dallas a wash. Next, we have concealment. The concealment of the Dallas is just barely better than the Pensacola's, but not significant enough to warrant a point. Since the Dallas doesn't have a smoke consumable, the detectability while firing and smoke advantage is something it will rarely get to make use of, so no point there either. And here we have the armor viewer. Look at all that blue. And oh god, look at those two raised citadels. You can see them from a mile away. Now the Pensacola does have thicker overall armor, but, and this is a big but, its citadel is massive. Take a look at this thing. This citadel almost stretches the entire length of the ship. I couldn't even fit the whole thing into a screenshot from the side. I had to take it from an angle. A massive portion of the citadel in both ships is above the waterline, but the Dallas's is actually slightly better armored in some places. So I consider their armor to be both so terrible that neither gets a point. But seriously, when you take everything into account, it's about even. Now that those comparisons are done, let's take a look at my recommended commander for these ships. I recommend Norman Scott for both of them. He is the more offensive-minded cruiser captain for these ships, but he does have the armed and ready skill in the third slot there, which I think is the most valuable defensive skill for a cruiser. In the first row, I've chosen Beyond Range, because you don't really need Burn It Down here when we're going to take a similar skill in the second row. Speaking of which, it's Igniter. It does have a +3 chance to ignite fires as opposed to the +2 of Burn It Down in skill slot 1. In the third slot, I've chosen Armed and Ready, although Punch Through is a solid choice for experienced players. In the fourth slot, it's really up to you. I've chosen Fixated, but Steer Clear is also viable as well. For the legendary skill, this choice is really up to you. I've been experimenting with Equilibrium of Power, but the recent nerf makes it less desirable. You don't really want it on a slow reloading ship anyways. Fully packed is good for the extra consumables, and Refill Station helps with the reload time. Personally, I choose Refill Station for the Pensacola and EOP for the Dallas. As for inspirations, there are quite a few to choose from. I've gone with Membeli and Kuznetsov for my Alaska build, but there are many other good choices. For both ships, Kuznetsov is a good choice for his increased range, and Sansonetti is a good choice for his damage reduction. For the Pensacola, you might want to take Tenet for that Citadel damage reduction. You could also choose Yamamoto for the AP penetration, Luchins for the AP damage, or Membeli for the reload time like I have. For the Dallas, you might want to choose Makawa for concealment, Von Muller for speed, or Rue for increased HE damage. As for the other cruiser commander, Kincaid, he's definitely a viable option. If you're just starting out the game, and he's the only commander you have, then absolutely you can use him. He's just more of a defensive commander though. As for the playstyle of these ships, for both of them you need to find cover. For the Pensacola, you look to use AP on broadside cruisers. For the Dallas, you want to HE spam the hell out of everything, but most of all, hunt down destroyers. The Dallas is great for that at tier 5. Now before we advance to the summary, we first need to take a look back at artillery again. I apologize for this, but while I was in the editing room, I found something I'd forgotten to cover. Bet some of you were already on it. The gun caliber. The Pensacola has 203mm guns, while the Dallas only has 152s. This means that the Pensacola has the advantage when it comes to penetrating thicker armor, so this will give it a 4th point. And with that, that brings us to our summary. The Pensacola has better penetration, a better fighter, more hull points, and better secondaries, while the Dallas has a better reload time, better turret traverse, a higher DPM, and a higher fire chance per minute. As it stands, both ships have 4 points, so what do I do for a tiebreaker? Well, if you ask me, the Pensacola has a couple of weak points. A better fighter and better secondaries aren't things that I feel are going to affect the outcome of matches on a consistent basis. If these two ships are fighting each other one-on-one, I feel like the Dallas's increased reload time and DPM would give it the advantage. And overall, during the course of a 15-minute match, the Dallas's higher DPM will have a greater effect on the outcome. And so that's why I've decided to give this versus to the Dallas. Of course, this is all very subjective. What do you guys think? Let me know which ship you guys like better down in the comments below. Well, that concludes this episode of Versus. If you did like this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And as always, stay healthy and do what makes you happy.